growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, Dr. Steve Rasner here. Welcome to The Lionhearted Dentist. Welcome to another week of this pandemic world that we're living in and trying to recover from, and wishing all of you good thoughts and power to sustain even the more challenges we seem to have these days. If you're tuning in for the first time, please write to me and let me know if there's any changes you'd like. I can adapt easy. I do these weekly for the last couple years. I seem to have a very niche following, albeit spread around the world. You can write to me at my name, Dr. Rasner, no period, at AOL.com. And one of the things I like to know is if the recent, as in the last month, of different approaches I'm giving you on this podcast, like what I'm trying to do right now is combine the combination of the clinical skills required and the case presentation skills required. And when they merge, they result in what you hear me lightly refer to as these monster weeks. And I just had another one. And so a monster week for me is great productivity, great satisfaction from my patient's perspective. I mean, I can feel it. I hear and see the things they say and do, bringing me presents and kind words. And you know, it resonated a thought to me that I'm sure is true for many of you. If it's not quite where you want it to be yet, it's something worth working toward. And that is that, you know, I guess sometimes life events like a pandemic cause us to make alterations in our way we do things. And sometimes the outcomes are shockingly better than you ever dreamed. You know, so what I'm saying is, when I was back in early May, like some of you. By the way, we're in like late August here of 2020. I remember thinking before I went back to reopen, what should I expect? I knew what my plan was going to do. I've shared it with you on earlier podcast. But I didn't really know what to expect because I didn't know how the patients would respond. I didn't know if patients would even want to come back. And here we are, all of us back several months. And surely for me, as I'm sure for many of you, it's forced me to slow down because I just can't see as many patients with the new governing protocols that we use for PPEs, and the traffic flow and all that stuff has reduced probably activity by 30% in my office. The productivity was at one time reduced the same. It's creeping back despite the fact that we're seeing less patients. And if nothing else, I've said this earlier, and I know this is true for some of the listeners, even if it doesn't come back, as long as I can maintain profitability and satisfaction of my professional life at this level, I like this a little better, maybe much better. And I don't know when I would have attempted it. You know, I don't know when any of us would have said, you know what, I'm going to schedule 25% less because I suspect that will make me happier. You know, you get into these patterns of practice over all these years and you just stay with them if they seem to work. So I don't think I would have slowed down. And the slowdown has really not had, I got to be honest, a tremendously detrimental effect on my bottom line at all. I mean, if I'm going to be totally honest, it's improved. I can't really explain that yet, except for the fact that I think we're all much more mindful of the little aspects that make up our practice, like overhead. You know, which brings up a side point I wasn't going to include in today's podcast, but a good analogy for that is as follows. I've been practicing 40 years. Probably for the first 12 to 15, I worked 5 days a week. In the very beginning, I worked alternate Saturdays. And here's what happened. Here's what I discovered. If you haven't discovered this yet, then this is the gem from this podcast. Here it is. I've told you that I invested an enormity of time early in my career, in my late 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, in CE. And so a lot of the courses I would have to take off on Thursday and Friday. So what I discovered is when I would do that, like I know you do, wouldn't you pay more attention to how you were scheduled on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, since that's all you would be there? And that's what happened with me. I realized if I put more focus on exactly what I was doing in the less days I would be there on that given week, that I often made out just as well as I did when I worked a full 5 days, even 6 days on some of those weeks. And those of you that are working 5 days right now, and look, and you've heard me say this before, so I stand by it. In the beginning of your practice, you have to do what you have to do. I mean it. And what I mean by that is you got to put yourself out there in the community that you live in. And sometimes to do that, you have to work nights or you have to work weekends. Why? Because you're willing and have to be willing in the beginning to do things that maybe other more seasoned clinicians aren't going to do anymore. And there's always a segment of the market that seeks those hours. And if that's what you need to do, then you need not feel less or that you're not doing the right thing. Oh my God, I'm working so hard. You know, remember our brothers and sisters that are physicians in their early training, and they're working 100-hour weeks, if not more, and getting paid very, very little. I always would recall that analogy to me, and it seemed like what we were doing wasn't quite as bad. It wasn't as bad, nearly as bad actually, is how I felt. So it's a price to pay. And as you evolve and the community knows, those patients that you saw on Wednesday night, those Monday nights or Saturday mornings are going to tell other patients that are available during normal working hours. And it's like anything else in any business. As you become more in demand, you can be more stringent or less flexible would be another way of saying it with the hours available. And I got to tell you, if you're all in dentistry, and if you're a Lionhearted dentist, you're all in. Okay? You're not half in. We're doing it more than 4 days a week becomes a challenge when you've put many years in. I don't think it'd be unusual to tell you that if you could get by on 3.5 days, 3 days, and all in, by the way, doesn't mean you work 12, 14 hours. It means the type of work you've trained to do that results in the Lionhearted dentist outcomes that you've heard me say. That's what results in these monster weeks. That doesn't happen just graduating dental school and putting a shingle on your roof that says dentist. It requires enormous investment of time and energy to get to that point. And even when you have it running on automatic pilot, there's always going to be deviations or changes in the world around you. I mean, it could be a recession. You know, in my 40 years, I've had 5 recessions. And I mean something you can feel, trust me. You won't have to guess when they're happening. The world around you will tell you. None of us ever had a pandemic, so this is another new challenge. And what I'm getting to is this. What it's done for me now, later in my career, is it's forced me to work on, even though I'm doing 4 days a week, less patients per day. When I did that, just like when I would take 2 days off in a given week to take a course, it forced me to look harder at exactly what I'm doing each day, which then in turn led me to have some meetings with my schedulers, which led to changes on what we're scheduling and how we're scheduling each day. And paying a lot of attention to that, telling the team that time is more important than ever, because revenues could be affected. So maybe I'm a little more strict about when they could come in, how early they could get there, and how they hang around sometimes. I know maybe this isn't resonating, but it's certainly true in my office during my career. I'm a little more strict about getting in, getting work done, and going home. So that results in perhaps a little less overhead with staff. So what I'm saying to you is, those of you that are early in your career, do what you have to do. But when you get to the point that you have full schedules, you'll be able to feel this. You can experiment with it, by the way. There's a rule I call the 120-day rule. I don't know if you've heard me talk about it in a long time. That's my rule. I never heard anybody else speak about it. It means when you hear a new idea on this podcast or other podcast, or if you hear it in a course and you're not sure if you want to implement that, but you think it might be a good idea, well, the Lionhearted dentist protocol would say try it. As long as you're positive that wouldn't be the demise of your organization, try things. Because if you don't try things, you don't shoot the puck, as they say, you're never going to score. You don't take the shot, you're never going to know. And if it doesn't work out, the advice I've given you or somebody else in 4 months, then stop it. And that applies to so many things. The monthly meetings that you've heard me talk about. You got to remember, all this stuff you hear just come off out of my mouth is from years and years of trying and doing things. Some of them failed, some of them weren't worth it. Like, a good example is my monthly meeting. I had a monthly meeting. I'm sorry, this is not even where I was going with this direction, but that's kind of the flavor and tone, I think, of these podcasts, because I'm trying to keep it real. And when I talk to you, my intention today is to talk about another monster week and what happened this week, specifics, what went right, what went wrong, and how it resulted still in a very good week. But sometimes I go off on tangents because I practice every day like you do. And it reminds me of things. So I used to have these monthly meetings. I mean, religiously, 90 minutes, tried all kinds of things, gave up on trying to worry about how much money I might lose or not. And I started having them at the beginning of my day on a Thursday. True story. And I would have all my staff there, which would range over my career of 15 to 20 people. And I did that for years and years. And these meetings were well run. Basically, they're at the beginning of your day, because if you try anything else, it doesn't work. At the end of your day, you're not all done at the same time. Maybe it's you, doc. Maybe it's a hygienist. And, you start 30, 40 minutes late. It's a bad scene. You can't even entertain asking them to come in on a day off, because that's the world we live in. And if you have 20 employees like I do, or if you have 4, they're not going to be all equally invested. You'll get somebody that'll be willing to come in on their day off, but you got to go with the rules. It's worth doing it, because at the monthly meeting is where you make fundamental organizational changes. You can't do that in the morning, like you drive to work and you think of this thing you thought you heard of over the weekend on social media, and you want to implement it so badly you can't wait to talk about it. So you rush it out of your mouth in the morning meeting on Tuesday, and there's no follow-up to it, and you actually forget 5 months later that you even brought it up. You hear me? Because that's happened to me. That's why the morning meetings you have every day, and you better be having them. If you want to live like a Lionhearted dentist success outcomes, you got to have morning meetings. Sometimes I'm not in the mood for them, but you got to have them, because they are about correcting the bumps that may come in a given day and maximizing that day's profitability and productivity. More importantly, your productivity. Minimizing the bumps. How can you do that without looking at who's coming in? Human beings made these schedules. And so does it really work? That's the first thing you look at. There's a lot of things we could talk about. Maybe I'll bring that up in an upcoming podcast as just a review. But as the point in this podcast is, that's not where you talk about organizational changes. Some of you are stuck in insurance, aren't you? Of course, many of you are. That's the meeting, the monthly meeting, where you go in prepared. Like if I was going to talk about which insurances, there's a set agenda for these meetings, literally typed out like you're a Rotary Club or Civic Club, like they do that, a city council, and you have listed what you're going to speak about. You just don't go in and rant. Ask me how I know. That's not worth it, because I used to do that. You really want to grow and change and see it in front of your eyes, you got to plan for it. You got to be willing to put down your drills and scalers and perioprobes and plan for your success. And let me tell you something, 1 meeting a month. There was years I did 2 meetings a month, if that's what I thought I needed. We once had 3 consecutive years. It's the only time in my career that happened. In 9 to 2012, our production went down 3 years in a row. That's the only time in my 40 years that happened. There was a recession, and we dropped $700,000. And to recover from that, I tried lots of little things while we were in it. I couldn't get us out of it. So I doubled the monthly meeting. Believe me, I was scared to do it, because now it was 2 90-minute sessions a month that we weren't actually sitting at a chair charging out services that we provided. That's kind of scary, So, true story, I would never lie to you. That year, third year we had a downturn in our productivity, and I went to 2 meetings a month. We increased that year by $700,000. So that was the beginning of our comeback, and we've never looked back. I can't sit here and tell you that each year is up 10 and 20% like it used to be, because it's not. When you get up and produce in the levels that I produce in, first of all, I don't even have any desire to do, unless I hired extra dentist. And that's all part of why you do what you do. I'm very goal-oriented. I'm trying to make you goal-oriented, especially early in your career. These are really important things that, as I'm saying them, if you're not doing them, then you need to write to me, and I need to respond to you either with other podcasts or personally, and be very, very specific. It is not an accident how I landed here, and I'm able to talk to you about, some fortunate years of success in the profession we both share. It's just happened through me being passionate so much about what all you are passionate, and really trying to do things to run it like a efficient business. And so, really off the tangent, of course, right now, but the monthly meeting is a time when, just to finish this thought, like if I was thinking about getting out of insurance, and I remember when I was doing this earlier in my career, you don't walk in and just talk about it. You prepare during that month with the thoughts you want to delve into, and you say, your insurance department, I need a spreadsheet before we go in there of the 6 major companies that we're doing and the 10 major procedures that we do the most: scaling, root planing, crowns, root canal, dentures, implants. And I want to know, line item by line item, what each company's paying me. See, you probably don't know that. What you probably know is this, that whatever day of the week your mail comes in for participating in these toxic companies, that, well, at least money came in, right? Maybe it's a good Wednesday you have, or a good Monday that you have, and the money flows in. You don't sit there if you get a $7,000 check on Monday that makes Monday look pretty good at the end of the day. You don't sit there at the end of the day and go back and say, well, what did I get paid actually on that root canal I did that was so hard 4 weeks ago? Nobody does that. What you do is you feel satisfied that the day ended up with a pretty good numbers, and so many of you, just like me, do that year after year, and you're just getting ripped off by certain insurance companies, if not all of them, to be quite honest with you. But some are clearly worse than others. And then what you do is, when you have the facts in front of you, You say something, well, how many patients do we have that participate in that insurance? That's why everybody has to know this information before you go in. And then what would be the consequences of not accepting that insurance anymore? And that's how you begin the journey. Now, you can't take that journey if you haven't done anything first that new patients or patients that go out of network can palpate, that can feel that you're different and you're worth it. So what would some of those things be? A spotlessly clean office, a spot-on new patient voice coordinator that knows exactly how to make people feel value and get accurate information and not tell the patient when they call, oh, we don't take your insurance. Give me a break. Don't tell me some of you don't do that, because you do. Do you understand? This is it. You're not getting a second chance in life at being a dentist all over again. And it's going to go fast. And I sound mad right now because I don't know if I'm getting through to all of you. And I want you, if you're taking the time out of your lives to listen to this, you need to hear the important stuff. And you need to invest the time and not just hope for a miracle that next year will be better than this last year. Now I know those listening all don't have dental practices, but some of you, that's your dream, is you're being an associate. And you need to hear what I'm saying, because this is the pattern you follow. What I'm saying to you is the day you open up, part of the price you're going to pay on top of the electric and the plumbing and the dental supplies and the labs is taking time out of your day once a month, if not twice a month, to analyze what you want your practice to be. This is not little, my friend. What community activities you're going to do that set you apart from every office in town. We did community activities, give backs to the community, twice a year for at least 20 years. I'm not going to lie to you, we don't do it as much anymore. The last one I did was last June. We had a dinner, dance, prom for the ARC Association. That's the Association of Mentally Challenged Adults. And it was lovely. And you can't do that stuff if you just open your practice. I guess not. That was every bit of $3,500, maybe $4,000, I don't recall. But for years and years, we did those community activities were born in those meetings. How do we answer the phone for a variety of circumstances? That's where the protocol book that I wrote, that you can get, please, I'm not on here to sell my products for you, but it'd be silly of me not to mention one that I already have. That's where the protocol book I wrote 10 years ago came from, called What to Do When. What do you say when a new patient calls? How do you start your day? How do you finish your day? You can find that, by the way, on the Rasner Institute.com, where you can also find the courses that I'm being booked for in 2021, hopefully, that they'll stick, and the courses I give in my office. I guess this podcast got away from me. I hope it's worth it to you. I started out wanting to tell you about the specific week I had, and it was another monster week for me. When I say that to you, you better believe I'm not bragging. I'm happy to share again a success story with you based on exactly the stuff you're hearing me talk about. It's not expensive except the energy it requires. None of this stuff I'm giving you cost literally lots of money. I'm not telling you need a scanner. I don't even own a scanner. How about that? We use VPS and type of material that we take. If you have a scanner, God bless you. And most of you probably do. I don't have a CEREC machine. I'm not telling you the key to my success is buying a $140,000 laser. I'm not telling you that. These are just hard, energy-driven things that are very easy to let slip. It's very easy to say, I'll skip the monthly meeting next month because maybe your productivity's not so good. So let me close by saying this. We got off the track and I started talking about the importance of changing major cultural cornerstones of your practice to get to this level, they don't happen unless you're willing to put down instruments of practice and talk through it. And there's so many levels of what I just gave you one example of the toxic insurances you have. It could be the new patient experience that you don't have designed well enough in your practice. Maybe you're not wowing enough patients. And when I say wow from Steve Rasner, it's not fluffy balloon BS stuff. It's not that. It's a professional, value-driven attitude by everybody that patient sees, whether it's a sterilization assistant whose primary job is to turn over rooms, she's included too, or me, or everything is absolutely orchestrated for the purpose of making people feel safe, value, that they feel valuable when they're there. Have any of you ever walked into, because I have, a new medical office and somebody just hands you forms, or they're on the phone as they're talking to you and you're clearly just patient number at 10 o'clock. That's not what's going on in my office. And I'm not setting off firecrackers, obviously, or sparklers, I should say, and giving them a bunch of fluff that everybody forgets the details of what's important, getting their bill right, quoting them their out-of-pocket expenses from the day one and not changing that, being on time. And we could go on and on and on with this stuff. But the interesting thing is, 40 years into this, it's not even like complicated. It's basic human value of why you do business with the people that you do business with outside of dentistry. If you just think about it for a minute, whoever you engage with, whoever your bank is, your veterinarian, your cleaner services, your laundry services, you wouldn't keep going to those people if they didn't give you a good product and if they didn't make you feel value. And you would change if they changed. I hope this helped. Wasn't the direction I intended on going. Next week, I'm going to delve into specific cases I had set aside for you and why they worked, most of them, and why they didn't work. I mean, others. Have a great week. Hang in there. If you're listening to me, you are going to make it. I'm telling you, I feel more affirmation of these principles than I ever have in my 40 years. Stick with me. See you next week on the Lionhearted.